Aggressive rocker, pronounced rocker, huge rocker, we keep hearing that kind of things in shoe reviews nowadays, so for sure it must be a good thing. Yeah, surely it is, but why? How does it work? And is it for everybody? Or could it even be dangerous? Actually, they all look pretty much the same, but let me measure the height of them first.
5.4, 5.6, 5.6, 5.4, 4.8, 5.2, 4.8.
Alright, so they are not all quite the same, although very similar. So first of all, what do we mean by a rocker? So in the walking or running gait cycle, there are actually 3 rockers. The first rocker is, let me get rid of that, when you hit the ground, typically with your heel a little bit ahead of you, and there is a rotation at the ankle from dorsiflexion to antiflexion, just basically to put your foot flat on the ground. So that rotation is the first rocker. After that, the second rocker occurs when you shift your body weight from this side of the vertical to the other side of the vertical. So there is again a rotation here at the angle when you basically move forward. And this rotation of the ankle is the second rocker. And the third rocker is when your foot lifts from the ground and sort of rolls forward. So there is a rotation of the ankle again from this dorsiflex position to a more anti-flex position. So from dorsiflexion to antiflexion, and some folding of the toes at the same time to facilitate the rolling forward movement, but we'll talk about that in just a moment. And then allegedly there will be a fourth rocker that occurs in the air when you collect your leg or your foot in the air, and it goes from antiflexion to dorsiflexion, again in preparation for the next landing. So when it comes to running shoes, we implicitly talk about the third rocker that occurs at the end of your gait cycle, just before toe off. But the first rocker at the heel is important too, and that's actually why most shoes do incorporate some kind of heel bevel or rocker in the heel, more or less pronounced, starting more or less at the front or at the back of the shoe, so more like here or here. Like this one is very pronounced. Here you can see another lighter heel rocker. Even in leisure shoe there is some kind of rocker at the heel and a little bit at the front. But let's focus on the rocker at the front of the shoe, even though some of the principles could apply to the heel rocker. Okay, then of course the question is, if the foot intrinsically has got all the necessary mobility to walk and run, then what is the purpose of the front rocker in a shoe, or the heel rocker? Or rather said, how does it contribute to faster running? Or is it really there for speed performance, or rather to avoid injury, for instance? Or is it just hype and marketing gimmick? Alright, the number one most important role of the front rocker in a racing shoe, as far as I understand, is that it allows for reaching the position where the Achilles tendon is tensed and ready to recoil and thrust you forward, in a position that is tilted forward. So if your leg is here, the angle of the leg to the vertical is much more tilted forward, much more so than if there was no rocker. Like, even though your ankle is dorsiflexed, the angle would be much more vertical, so you would push more vertically. Whereas with the rocker, it allows for the position again where the Achilles tendon is tense and your calf is ready to do its job. Position where the leg is much more tilted forward, so the direction of the push is more forward. Notice that I'm not talking about pushing with your toes like that. I'm talking about really the angle of the leg at the moment when the Achilles tendon is tensed. And then typically this also combines with the action of an S-shaped carbon plate, like in this case here. So that's the carbon plate. You can see by the geometry of the rocker, when you reach this position that I was talking about, that's when the front part of the plate is actually horizontal, and anchored to the ground due to your body weight, and that's where you get this springboard effect here with the Achilles in the leg here. So it's a combined action of the S-shaped plate and the rocker. Now imagine the same thing with no rocker, like that. Now you would have to either fold your toes a lot, like that, coming with a whole lot of other issues like rubbing in your toes, potentially black toenails, also some wear and tear in the upper and the midsole around this area where the sort of hinge is located, and so on. Or like I said, you would reach the position where the Achilles tendon is tense and ready to recoil at a much more vertical position or a shoulder angle. So that's the number one effect of the rocker. Number two is that if you strike on your forefoot, like here more or less, then the bounce effect occurs more forward. I'm talking about the bounce here on your forefoot, not about the recoil effect of the Achilles, but the bounce, because there is because of the rocker, there is more foam in this area here, just under the ball of your foot, more than in the toes. So this area bounces more, so the force here is bigger than the force here, right? So that naturally creates a tilt forward during the bounce, and you can actually feel that. Now if you take a shoe with little to no rocker, the bounce would be much more vertical because it's the same here as here. Number three, it contributes to feeling better the ground under your forefoot and your toes, and this is achieved by increasing the pressure under the ball of your foot, because of the rocker design and the curve geometry. The surface in contact with the ground during this rocking movement, the surface is rather small. It's much reduced compared to a flatter shoe. So if the surface is reduced with the same force coming from your from hitting the ground and from your body weight, the force being the same and the surface reduced, the pressure becomes higher. And that in turn, I believe, contributes to achieving a better bounce from the foam in this area under the ball of your foot. The fourth effect of the front roller is that it facilitates overcoming this sort of tipping point that there is when you have to lift your body weight. I mean, you can feel that much better when walking than running, but if you walk with a flat shoe or even a leather shoe, you will feel that you have to sort of lift your body weight up to a point where it sort of falls down on the other side of let's say the vertical. So with no rocker, there is a lot of up and down oscillation of your body, which obviously is a lot of wasted energy. So the rocker in this sense contributes to saving energy and achieving a much more sort of gliding forward sort of movement without that much oscillation. And in the fifth place, the rocker also contributes to reducing the strain on the arch of your foot and the plantar fascia, which is the fascia under your foot, by reducing the tension on the plantar fascia, because the rocker does the job of rocking and allows for the foot to remain more or less flat inside the shoe without having to accommodate too much, as opposed to a flatter shoe with no rocker, where the arch has to do a lot more of accommodation and movement, and the toes have to bend a lot more. So obviously when the toes bend, the arch here gets a lot of tension, and that can cause plantar fasciitis. So the rocker reduces the risk of plantar fasciitis, but not only that, it also reduces the chances for getting all sort of rubbing and possibly blisters or black toenails or whatever, or irritation on any part of your foot, because the foot does not have to accommodate so much and can remain sort of immobile inside the shoe, reducing a lot the relative movement of the foot with respect to the upper and the insole and the shoe in general. So it works all as one block, and the foot does not move inside the shoe. So it does not have to accommodate and do all sort of movement inside the shoe, therefore reducing the risk of getting blisters and black toenails and so on. And by the way, it's worth mentioning that the insole inside the shoe, I don't think I can show you, but the insole is not flat, it's not completely flat, it's sort of curved upwards in the toe area, so there's also sort of a rocker in the insole. Now, why is that? Well, I assume this is to create some kind of preload in the plantar fascia, so it is already pre-tensed when it has to do its job, which is on the one hand to sort of absorb the pounding when you strike, when you hit the ground. So if it's already pre-tensed, it works better at absorbing the pounding. And on the other hand, it's also to, the arch has to transmit the force from the forefoot, which is in contact with the ground, so the ground contact point, to the back of the foot and the ankle, where your leg is located here, because your body is here, your body weight is here, so this is the part that has to get the impulse and that has to move. It's here, it's not here. So the force has to be transmitted to the back of your foot, and therefore, the whole foot needs to be pretty strong, and that's the role of the arch, and that's where it gets the help from the carbon plate to transmit the force from the forefoot to the back of the foot. Yeah, and not only that, but I also assume that the curve in the insole is also there to sort of pre-lift your toes inside the shoe, so that your toes don't have much more range of movement, like upwards. The possibility of your toes hitting the upper by bending up is lower than if the insole was flat, and therefore reducing also the chances of black toenails and that kind of things. And number 6, the rocker also contributes to achieving the heel to toe drop, because the drop is typically measured from more or less here to here, sort of past the point where the rocker starts. So there is less foam here, so that on paper achieves a higher drop. And number 7, when running uphill, so let's assume there is a slope, it facilitates sufficient ground contact and better grip, not because of the curve, but because of the angle with the ground. And the same occurs, in fact, when running downhill. The heel rocker also helps getting a better contact with the ground. Let's take a superblast, for example. You see a good heel rocker here. Now, how to test the rocker in the shop? Well, if you're lucky enough to find a shop where there is a treadmill where you can try the shoe, then lucky you. Unfortunately, that's definitely not the case for me where I live. But anyway, even if you can try the shoe on a treadmill, it's still a good idea to do a little stability test in the shop. So let me show you. This is how I do it. Just stand on one leg with your heel lifted off the ground. So with your full body weight on the forefoot of one foot. Ideally, hold your hands on your hips so you don't use your arms for balance, and then just use a stopwatch to check how long you can hold it until you fall. This, as such, is a great exercise to work on your stability and all the stabilizing muscles in your foot, knee, hips, your core, and so on. And it's a great test at the same time to gauge the stability of the shoe. But in this case, it also serves to give you good feedback about the rocker. So while you do this exercise, you will start to feel how the rocker tilts you more or less forward. You will feel more or less pressure at the tip of your toes here. And more importantly, as you sort of wiggle, you will feel how the foam amplifies this instability in this movement. And of course you will also feel how the carbon plate contributes to improving the stability of the shoe. So that tells me, for instance, that the Alpha Fly very much wants to put me on the tip of my toes, like here, and also I can feel very well that the pods here, every time I sort of wiggle a little bit and put some pressure on the pods, they sort of bounce back. They're very sensitive, and again that tilts me forward. In the case of the deviate, I can also feel some kind of tilting forward or push forward, probably because the part here under the ball of my foot is more bouncy because there is more foam than at the tip of the toes. However, with the Metaspeed Edge, partly because these shoes are too big for me because I had to go one size up, so my toes only reach up to here more or less, and also the rocker starts later, so I get only parts of the rocker under my toes, and therefore they feel much more like not so much rolling forward, but more I don't want to say backwards because they're not pushing me backwards, but I don't feel that tilting forward that much. Now, of course, it's just a static test, something to possibly do in the shop. It's not exactly how we run, so be careful with that. But it does give some feeling of the rocker. Now, how much rocker is good and how much is too much? How high should it reach and how far back should it start? Well, in what respects his role in allowing a more forward horizontal push at the point where the Achilles tendon is tense and recoils. It obviously depends on how far behind your body you're able to reach with your leg. So the faster you are, the more elite you are, the farther behind you're gonna reach with the leg, and then the more likely you are to benefit from a rocker where the angle here is more upwards, more pronounced, or let's say the rocker which is higher, but not necessarily so, it's more about the angle. But on the other hand, if like me you're an average runner and you don't reach that far behind with your leg, although I'm trying, well then perhaps you don't need the rocker to be so pronounced or vertical in terms of the angle or reach that high. Or at least wearing shoes with a higher rocker, higher angle than what your leg can reach, is not going to make you faster. However, if your style is not extending the leg behind your body that much, but rather jumping or bouncing, then assuming you have a decent stride and you hit the ground on your forefoot under your center of mass, and then you're just bouncing forwards, then yes, a rocker will definitely help you bounce forward. So in this case, it's better if the curvature of the rocker starts further back towards the back of the shoes. So when you compress the foam here, it thrusts you forward because there's more foam here than here. But that depends also on your body weight, the foam softness and how much it deforms. So obviously the best is to try it and try to feel it for your own case. So yeah, try to feel that the rocker procures the right amount of bounce at the right time in your gait cycle and in the right direction. And it also depends on the sizing. So if you go oversized for whatever reason, like I did with the Metaspeed Edge Tokyo, this is like at least one size too big. So that means my toes only reach more or less here inside the shoe. So they don't make use of the full length of the rocker. The rocker is all relative to the placement of your foot. So in this case, even though the rocker on the shoe might start early, when you wear it, it acts as a late rocker because your foot is too short. By the way, yeah, when it starts farther behind, it's called early rocker, and when it starts towards the end of the toes, it's called late rocker. And finally, in terms of overcoming this sort of tipping point that I was talking about earlier, So bringing your body mass from one side to the other. I don't believe that that type of rocker, or let's say its sharpness, makes a lot of difference. Pretty much all rockers nowadays have this effect of avoiding the vertical oscillation and making for a more like sort of glide forward sort of movement. Now a couple of warnings concerning the rocker. So like I said earlier, the geometry of the rocker makes for a smaller contact surface with the ground at any moment in time during this phase, and so that increases the pressure in this area under the ball of your foot. So that indeed generates more bounce, but it also increases the pressure on this area, on the ball of your foot, on the metatarsal head here, and that can be detrimental, especially because, like I said earlier, the insole also sort of pre-bends the toes a little bit. So that means the area where the pressure is exerted is really limited to the metatarsal heads here. So it's not uncommon that you might feel discomfort here in between the bones here. And another warning, when your foot is bent like this and the shoe sort of folds in like that, then the toe box space reduces by, let's say, about 5 millimeters. So that's 1 EU size, or half UK size, I believe. So your toes may feel comfortable on flat when trying the shoe in the shop, but when you fold the toes and then bend the shoe like that, the toes will get closer to the tip of the box and also will lift higher and will be closer to the fabric of the upper. So I don't want to get into details about that now, but that's something you should consider when choosing shoes in the shop. So what are the risks associated with the front rocker? Well, number one, there is a risk of loss of muscle strength in your arch and your toes, basically because they don't have to work that much because the shoe does the work for them. Number two, a loss of ankle mobility because the heel and front rocker reduces the need for dorsiflexion to antiflexion movement in the ankle, so you may lose range of motion. Three, the rocker reduces the pounding on your feet, like no pounding like that. It absorbs the pounding by rolling and gliding forward, but it doesn't come for free. It actually transfers the load, partially at least, onto your knees and hips. So that again speaks for strength and prehab work in the gym, I'm afraid. And four, possible injuries when you switch to other shoes or perhaps practice other sports, or when you switch to lifestyle shoes or flip-flops in the summer or whatever, because of what I said earlier, because your muscles are not trained, you lose some muscle strength, and therefore when you ask your body to move in different circumstances, it's not prepared and it might get injured. And now, what about the heel to toe drop? Well, there are also quite a few things to be said about the drop, but I guess I'll leave that for a future video because this one is already too long. So don't forget to subscribe, and in the meantime, if you haven't seen it yet, you might watch this video, which is where I explain how the carbon plate works, or watch this one, which are 4 running drills that are much more geared towards distance running than the typical ones. And otherwise, go run around and remember then to look around. Ciao.